Hello, welcome to the Elkhart County Historical Museum. We're here today to talk about a style period known as the Arts and Crafts Movement. And in Elkhart County, we are certainly aware of the value of industrialization and innovation and mechanization. And we benefit, our story benefits from the rise of industry, and we tell that story quite well here at the Elkhart County Historical Museum. But we're going to talk about a period or a movement that was a pushback against industrialization, and it rose in Great Britain at the time of at the point of the greatest industrialization in the world, and it came out of this idea that the worker and the designer and the craftsman should be in sync with each other, and that design was important, and this machine-made prevalence of objects needed to be countered with more of an emphasis on hand craftsmanship. So we're going to look at some of the objects in the museum's collection that reflect that, whether they were made by businesses that sold them or they were made at home by individuals who were adopting some of these principles of the arts and crafts movement in their own work. So today we're going to do an overview, talk about the arts and crafts movement just briefly, and then we'll go look at some objects. We find here at the museum that it's very easy to see the forest. And as you walk through the galleries upstairs, we have such a rich collection on exhibit that sometimes it's hard to see the trees. And when you visit the museum, we want you to take a pause and appreciate design, appreciate craftsmanship, appreciate the type of wood something might be made from, or the stylistic elements that went into it. Look at the feet of a piece of furniture. Look at the handles of a piece of pottery, and appreciate those things separate from the big picture of all of the objects that are on exhibit in one space. In the United States, the arts and crafts movement really centers on that first quarter of the 20th century. So 1900-ish to 1910 until about 1925, when we start to see a movement back to technology and the design elements that rise out of the Art Deco era. The arts and crafts movement in Britain was a 19th century trend, and it's associated with names that you will find familiar. Ruskin, William Morris. Many of you have seen William Morris wallpaper, maybe not realize that's what it was. And that leads us to other designer names that will sound familiar, like Stickley, and the furniture makers that are associated with Stickley, the Craftsman Workshop. And then we move into architecture, and the Prairie School, and the Bungalow, and Frank Lloyd Wright, and all of the architectural greats that come out of this era as well. So we're talking about the arts and crafts movement, and if you thought this is what we were going to be discussing, arts and crafts, you weren't exactly wrong about that, because the arts and crafts movement is about artistry and craftsmanship, and people have been applying decoration to various media from the beginning of people. So the arts and crafts movement doesn't hold a monopoly on individuals expressing themselves artistically. But there are a few things that you can take as characteristic of the arts and crafts movement, or feeding into it. So we're going to look at this little vase or pot just briefly. It is painted china with some pretty flowers and some gold swirls, and definitely not arts and crafts movement in its elements. But its shape is not that different from this vase that is from the Roseville Pottery. So how do we get from here to here? Well, in the Victorian age, china painting was a rising activity for especially young women. Hate to be gender specific, but the act or the art of china painting evolved into the Art Pottery Movement. In fact, a very accomplished china painter is one of the founders of the Rookwood Pottery, which is still operating in Cincinnati. This vase which is in our collection, is from Roseville Pottery, which happens to be an Ohio Art Pottery studio. A fascinating piece in the collection, also from 1910, is this box that has been decorated with a wood burner as well as notched all the way around. And what I love about this box is it has such an amazing story. So inside, they've even decorated the inside, and it says, Dave to Joe, birthday, January 10th, 1910. And then on this surface, it says, burned by grace. In this box are shirt collars. So the box was used as a box for collars at the time, 1910. Remember your your apparel of 1910. But along with the box and the collars is this wonderful note from Dave and Grace to Joe on the occasion of his birthday. And it's one of my favorite pieces. And next time you're here, take a look. It is in the Emporium. This stained glass window memorializes Martha Cook, and it was commissioned by her father, J.A. Cook. It was installed at the First Congregational Church of Elkhart in 1905, and it's reminiscent of the period of stained glass work that is characterized by the windows and other glass lamps of Louis Comfort Tiffany. If you look at the lilies and the fronds, lots of plant material used, the faces, and while it's not strictly considered a piece of arts and crafts movement work, it is from that same time period and it has many similar elements. We're here in the Not So Long Ago gallery, which I have to say, sometimes I struggle to find interpretive cues in this space. So I wanted to point out some really great examples from our collection of elements that are reminiscent of the arts and crafts period or the arts and crafts movement. This wonderful mirror is dated 1914, and it's covered in intricate inlay of a variety of woods. And what makes it so fascinating is it fits right into that time period of the arts and crafts movement, is clearly made by an amateur artist and done for someone specific, for home use possibly, but I just love this mirror. It's hanging over a library table that features that very traditional quarter-sawn oak top showing off the beauty of the wood, and then some simple shelves on either side with a sort of a teardrop cutout. Very basic, but also very in keeping with the style and line of the arts and crafts movement. If you follow me further into the room, in this corner we have three things I wanted to point out. One is this beautiful piano that is adorned with a perfect carving that's traditional to the arts and crafts motifs, and that is the oak leaf. If you look closely, you can see acorns in there as well. And this is a Kimball piano from, again, around 1910. On top of the piano is a pair of shells, artillery shells, that are decorated with thistles. And artillery shells adorned in this way are called trench art, and they were made by World War I soldiers. We actually have two pair of trench art shells. The other is in our memorial room gallery on the lower level at the far left. So please take a look at those next time you're in the museum. On the wall is quite an interesting hanging, not probably to everyone's taste, but this is a peacock, and it is stitched, you can see, in a variety of colors. What makes it important to telling the story of the arts and crafts movement isn't that it's a peacock, but that the colors are so in keeping with that traditional earthy muted color tone, and it speaks to that idea of handcrafted This would be the kind of thing that you might find in your traditional arts and crafts bungalow. When you're about to clean out your attic or downsize your grandparents' house, take a look around first. And that little box that your great-grandmother decorated, give it a second thought and a second look, because you probably have some wonderful things from the first quarter of the 20th century that are indicative of the arts and crafts movement that maybe carry a little more importance now that you're better informed about what you're looking at.